A gracious good day to one and all once again. 'Tis I, Norton the First, by grace of God, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico, back with you once again for episode 67 of Emperor Norton's fantastic history vlog. Today is June 11th, 2020, our 88th day under a shelter-in-place order here in San Francisco. Let's begin with our national days. Today is Kamehameha Day, honoring King Kamehameha the First, also known as Kamehameha the Great, was the founder and first ruler of the Kingdom of Hawaii. A statue of him was given to the National Statuary Hall Collection in Washington, D.C. by the state of Hawaii as one of two statues it is entitled to give. He was born in 1758 and died in 1819. It is also Corn on the Cob Day, so have some corn on the cob. It's Cousteau Day, which will make sense in a moment. Also, National German Chocolate Cake Day. Not one of my favorites. I'm not a fan of shredded coconut. Remember that. And National Making Life Beautiful Day. Well, don't I do that every day? Yes, indeed. Let's get to our San Francisco event for today, because it was on this day in 1962 that brothers John and Clarence Anglin and fellow inmate Frank Morris escaped from Alcatraz Island Prison, the only ones to ever do so. And we'll be reading from a History.com article by Natasha Frost this morning for an update on this story you may not be aware of. It is dated August 31st, 2018. It was one of the most ingenious prison breaks of all time, if it worked. In 1962, inmates and bank robbers Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin vanished from Alcatraz, the federal island penitentiary in San Francisco Bay. Ooh, they say here off the coast of San Francisco. They used sharpened spoons to bore through prison walls, left papier-mâché dummies in their beds, and floated away on a raft made of 50 raincoats. But what happened next has stumped historians for decades. Their bodies were never recovered, leaving many to wonder whether they perished in the choppy San Francisco Bay, got it right that time, or made it to the shore and freedom. In the years since, nearly 6 decades of silence from the men led many to conclude that the escape had met a watery end. The FBI closed its case in 1979, concluding that the escapees, were unlikely to have survived a treacherous swim of more than a mile of frigid waters to the mainland. But in January 2018, CBS San Francisco published an extract of a letter addressed to the FBI that told an altogether different story and claimed that the criminals had been at large since the 1960s. My name is John Anglin, it read. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. The letter was sent to the San Francisco Police Department's Richmond station in 2013, the broadcaster reported, but had been kept under wraps during the long investigation. An FBI laboratory examined the letter for fingerprints and DNA and analyzed the handwriting within, but the results were inconclusive. So that means yes, and it means no. So this leaves everything in limbo, security analyst Jeff Harp told CBS. In the letter, the writer explained that he was the last living member of the trio, with his co-conspirators dying in 2005 and 2008. He offered a deal. If authorities announced on television that he would receive a single 1-year jail sentence in which he could have the medical treatment he needed, I will write back to you to let you know the exact location where I am. This is no joke, unquote. The FBI did no such thing and instead repressed the letter. More recently, a 2015 History Channel special showed an alleged photograph of the brothers taken in Brazil some 13 years after their disappearance. Family members of the men have also reported strange experiences that suggest there may have been more to the story than many believe. It's always been talked about through the family, David Widner, a nephew of John and Clarence Anglin, told CBS. My grandmother received roses for several years after the escape. If Anglin was still alive today, he would be nearly 90. He has not been heard from since. Federal authorities have been quick to quash any rumors of a successful Great Escape. In an interview with CBS San Francisco, the U.S. Marshals investigating the case told the broadcaster they considered the lead closed with no merit and a simple hoax from someone hoping to scam and embarrass federal and local authorities. The Federal Bureau of Prisons say that they drowned once they got off Alcatraz and their bodies were swept out to the Pacific Ocean. End of story, National Park Service Ranger John Cantwell said. The prison was closed permanently in 1963, a year after the men vanished. Today, it plays host to more than 1 million tourists each year, often drawn to the site by the story at the Adrienne Brothers, which was adapted for the screen in the 1979 film Escape from Alcatraz, starring Dirty Harry himself. Whose name is this? Suddenly escaped from my mind. Clint Eastwood. Can you believe I forgot that? Oh well. John Anglin's cell, where the men made their exit, is a popular attraction. It's preserved almost perfectly with the same gaping hole in its teal-painted wall, but even the scene of the crime offers few answers as to where the great escapers ended up. So, the story's still open, or is it? We'll never know. Well, let's get on with our other events for today, because on this date in 1742, Benjamin Franklin, the only president of the United States who was never president of the United States, invents his Franklin stove, which I believe is still in use to this day, still being manufactured. In 1776, the Continental Congress created a committee of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston to draft a Declaration of Independence. In 1864, 300 feet of Meigs Wharf in San Francisco washed away in a storm. This date in 1937, the Marx Brothers' A Day at the Races is released in the U.S. On this date in 1939, the King and Queen of England taste their first hot dogs at a party thrown for them at the White House by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. 1959, the Postmaster General bans D.H. Lawrence book Lady Chatterley's Lover, and was overruled by the U.S. Court of Appeals in 1960. He thought it was obscene. 2008, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper made an official historic apology to Canada's First Nations in regard to a residential school abuse in which children were isolated from their homes, families, and cultures for a century. I believe the Native American community in the U.S. is still waiting for an apology for that and many other atrocities committed against them. 2019, the New York Times revealed an estimated 500,000 song titles, including masters of Chuck Berry, Louis Armstrong, and Ella Fitzgerald, were lost in a 2008 warehouse fire on the Universal backlot in Los Angeles. Terrible tragedy. These were the original recordings, and that was kind of kept covered up for over a decade. Let's get into our births today. 1880, Jeannette Rankin, American politician, first woman elected to the U.S. Congress from Montana, women's rights advocate and pacifist. 1910, birth date of Jacques Cousteau, the famous oceanic explorer, and that's why it's Cousteau Day. 1913, the football coach Vince Lombardi. 1933, one of my favorites, Gene Wilder, who was in so many movies. Young Frankenstein, The Producers, just Willy Wonka. Oh, he was great in that, wasn't he? Saw an interesting interview with him recently with Conan O'Brien, and he talked about that movie and how it didn't do well in its initial commercial release because the parents thought it would scare their children, and now their children are taking their children to see it, not in a movie theater, but on TV. So it's a great classic movie. 1939, Christina Crawford, the adopted daughter of Joan Crawford. I am not one of your fans. 1945, Adrienne Barbeau, you might remember from, of course, the series Maude, played the daughter. She's done a lot of acting, especially in recent years. 1949, Frank Beard of the band ZZ Top, ironically, the only member of ZZ Top without a beard. Maybe you should grow one just so it matches up. 1956, Joe Montana, the famous quarterback for the 49ers. Go Niners! And did you know there's a city in Montana that changed its name to Joe so it could be called Joe Montana? It's true. 1959, actor Hugh Laurie, of course, from House. In 1969, Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones. Deaths today, 1979, John Wayne. 1994, Jack Hanna. 1999, DeForest Kelley, who you might remember as Dr. McCoy on Star Trek. 2001, on this date, Timothy McVeigh, the American terrorist, was executed. 2003, we lost news broadcaster David Brinkley. And 2015, Ron Moody, who was brilliant in the movie Oliver, as well as Mel Brooks' first directorial movie assignment, The 12 Chairs, which I just saw recently. It was a very, very good movie, if you've never seen that. Well, that wraps it up for today. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy. Stay inside, but if you go outside, wear a mask, practice social distancing. Be smart, don't be stupid, don't take unproven cures. Be kind to one another, please. And until we meet again, a gracious